Hey, it's Ryan with an updated fishing report for Big Stone Lake. It's mid-January and the bite out here has been okay. Starting off with the ice conditions, what I'm finding out here is anywhere from about 18 to 22 inches of ice. The ice is in pretty excellent shape. Vehicle traffic is pretty much throughout the lake. I haven't been to the extreme north or south ends, so I can't really speak to that. But the central portion of the lake, there's trucks and fish houses pretty much everywhere. As far as the snow that's on top of the ice, it's pretty minimal. There's little drifts here and there. There's some patches of snow, but overall it's not bad at all. If you have four-wheel drive, you shouldn't have much issue getting around the lake. Moving on to the actual fishing. The fishing's been, it's been okay out here. We're getting some perch, we're getting some bluegills. If you see a crappie come in on the camera, the crappies seem to come and hammer the jig every time. We've been seeing that pretty much throughout the winter. But the fishing is a little bit up and down, and that's typical for midwinter. You have some days that are better than others. I think that'll change fairly quickly here. I think we're going to start to see the fish school up again. But as of right now, that's just what we're dealing with. We're getting fish. Some days are a little bit tougher, so we're keeping some smaller fish, stuff more in that 9-inch, maybe a little bit less than 9-inch range. And sometimes we're finding better fish that are 10 inches, maybe 10 to 11 inches. Wherever we go, it seems like we're doing quite a bit of sorting right now. I think that certain days you have to do more than others. It seems like on some days you can get a lot of the nicer fish to go right off the bat. The bigger perch will move in and take the jig. And then other days you'll notice that the bigger perch that are down there are a little bit reluctant to eat, and sometimes the smaller ones come in and swipe the bait out from under them. What I have noticed is each day is a little different in what it takes to trigger the fish to bite. Sometimes the bluegills, they want it morning or evening. Sometimes the perch, they want you to bring the jig up a little bit higher. Sometimes they want you to keep it right down at the weed tops in that curly leaf. So each day you gotta watch the Vexlar, watch the camera close, and kind of cater your jigging cadence to what the fish want that particular day. The baits that we're using aren't too different. I know I had been using a lot of jigging spoons, like 1/4 ounce jigging spoons, and fishing really aggressively and moving and trying to catch aggressive fish. And that had been working pretty well for me, but lately I've gotten away from that and I've gone more to just the tungsten jig. I can still pick up the real aggressive fish on the spoon, but it seems like it pays off for me to just stick with the tungsten jig lately and try to finesse more fish into biting. When you're picking out a tungsten jig, there's a few colors that you can go with. I usually go with something glow, something bright, and something gold. The gold is always my go-to. It generally always works. But when I pick out that jig, I usually just load it up with bugs. I buy spikes because they stay on the hook better. There's a lot of little fish in Big Stone, a lot of little perch out here. Actually a fair amount of small silver bass, white bass, depending on which portion of the lake you're in. And they can rob the bugs off your bait pretty quick. So putting a lot of spikes on your jig keeps you from having to rebait all the time. It allows you to be efficient, so when you do have a school of fish in, you can drop it right back in on them and you can really capitalize on the school while it's below you. On top of getting as many fish as you can while they're coming through, a lot of times if you and your friend are fishing by each other and you've got a jig constantly down the hole, or even a jig with a minnow next to you down the hole, it keeps the school around you longer and allows you more time to catch more fish. A 4 to 5 millimeter tungsten jig loaded up with bugs, spikes, either red or white, is the way to go. That's been working well for us. Which also leads me into my next presentation, which works really well and generally will get the biggest fish of the day, and that's just a plain hook and a minnow. Now you can put a set line down with either a jig head and a minnow or a plain hook and a minnow. Kind of depends on the day. Some days they want the minnow darting around on the plain hook, and other days they want it just held in front of them on the jig. So that's another one that you got to feel out. But between a couple guys, one guy can put a jig down, the other guy can put a plain hook down, and you'll be able to figure it out pretty quick what the fish want. Locating fish out here, that's not too tricky at the moment. Sometimes when the schools seem really tight, it may seem easy to pass by fish when you're trying to locate them. But right now what I've been noticing is things are very scattered. The schools are kind of loose, they're not too tight. There's just a lot of fish in a lot of places. So I'm not hammering on fish in any one area. It just seems like I go to an area, drill a bunch of holes, and we kind of pluck a lot of fish out of each hole. And sometimes at certain points of the day, you see the schools kind of start to maybe gather up a little bit and move around, and then they kind of peter out again. So that's what I've been noticing out here. If a guy goes out to the basin, drills some holes, moves a few hundred yards, drills some more holes, fishes those, and continues doing that up or down the lake, you're eventually going to stumble into a good school of fish or a better area of fish. If you're coming up, don't be afraid to get away from the other fish houses. Separating yourself and finding your own little school of fish is oftentimes the best way to have the best success out here. Hopefully these tips help you out, and have a great weekend.